whenever you're ready.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. We're waiting for some more people to come in. So while we're waiting, why don't you tell me where you're from? From Texas. Hello, Jane from Texas. From Memphis. Las Vegas, Netherlands. Yeah. Southern. Oh, that goes very quickly. Oh, that's from all over the world. North Carolina, Washington, Nederland, UK. Hi, everyone. Norway, Brazil. Wow, more from Norway, India. Very international. Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, then let's get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Birgit Koopsen, and I know that's a hard one, and I will not be offended if you're not able to pronounce that right. But somewhere here at the bottom, you can see how my name is written. So if you are want to look me up on social media, then you know how to spell it. So I'm a mixed media designer and printmaker from the Netherlands. And I'm a brand ambassador for Jelly Arts. And before COVID-19, I would travel the world to teach at stores and events and trade shows. And now a whole new world has opened up to me, and that's the world of live Zoom and Facebook classes. So here I am. And I want to say thank you to Michaels for having Jelly Arts and me over here. Today, if you can't watch the whole show, don't worry, it will be recorded and available for you tomorrow here at michaels.com/classes and also on the Michaels YouTube channel. I will tell you a bit about what we will do in class. So this is about getting started with gel printing. So it's all about the basics. But even if you're not a beginner, this could be a really fun class because sometimes I even have to remind myself of the basics because at some point you only do the more difficult stuff and you forget about how fun the basic printing can be and the beautiful prints you can get with basic printing. So I will tell you about how to treat your gel plate, how to store and clean it. I will tell you about the paints that you can use, different types of paper that you can print on. I will tell about creating texture with found objects and that kind of stuff. So when we are going to switch the camera, I will no longer be able to read your comments. And so I cannot answer to your questions, but Luann is here and Madison. Luann is the co-founder of Jelly Arts and Madison is also from Jelly Arts, and they are here to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and they will answer. And every now and then, Luann will ask me to answer a question for you live. So whatever your questions are, put them in the chat and we will get back to you. So I think I'm ready to switch the camera. Okay, so here we go. Here I have my gel plates. New gel plate still in the packaging. And so I have the 8x10 and the 5x7-inch gel plates here. Today I'm going to use the smaller one because of my limited space here. So I'm going to put this one aside and I'm going to work on this one. So I'm going to remove the case. And in here is the gel plate and there's this little piece of paper with all kinds of information about how to clean and store your plate also. So I usually keep my gel plates in this packaging after I use them. And when you get the new plate, it's in between 2 sheets of acetate. You won't need them anymore. You will not use them to store your plate. So you can just remove them, and then you can use them maybe to cut a mask or stencils from, but you will not use them to store your plate, because I will actually show you when you put the plate back on the acetate sheet, you will never get it as well on there as it was before. So you get these like air bubbles between the acetate and the gel plate. And if it's on there for a while, the pressure of the air will create a texture in your gel plate, which you will actually see in your prints. So instead of storing your plate between the acetate sheets, it's better to just store it between 2 sheets of copier paper. Now there is some mineral oil in the gel plate, and that will come out a little bit when you have it on a porous surface like paper, but that's okay. That's you should not put the gel plate on like a wooden table or anything like that where the oil can soak in. So it's better to have something underneath to prevent your workspace. So what I usually do is I put my gel plate on a sheet of paper, and I secure that on my desk, so my gel plate does not go all over the place when I print. And normally I will print on paper that has the same size as the paper that's underneath my gel plate. And I do that because then I can print layers and have them all in the same position. So I can line up my paper with the paper that's underneath the gel plate. And then when I do a second print and I line it up again, the second print will be exactly in the same position as that my first print was. So first of all, we need paper to print on. And you can basically print on any paper. So I have a selection of papers here. First is just random thin copier paper, which is very smooth and therefore will give you really nice prints. And because it's quite thin, you can use it to do all kinds of things with. You can use it as collage material. You can use it as backgrounds for your in your art journal, or you can make cards from it, whatever you want. You can do a lot with prints on copier paper. So if I do some gel printing without any end project in mind, I usually will print on copier paper, and then I just have a stash of printed paper that I can use for all kinds of things. Then you can print on cardstock or card, or what I have here is basically the heaviest copier paper that you can get. So it's about the same thickness as light cardstock. So when you use cardstock, most of the time it has some kind of texture, and you will see the texture in your prints. And if you want nice smooth prints, then you can use the copier paper because it's so smooth and you will have no texture. Then you can print on watercolor paper. And that's especially nice if you want to make prints that you want to frame, or if you want it to be your original print to be a card that you can send, then it's nice to have this sturdy watercolor paper. You can also print on parchment paper, which is a little bit translucent and is very nice to use as a collage material. The same for tissue paper or silk paper, which is even thinner than the parchment paper. And if you apply this to a background using a matte medium or a glue, then it will turn translucent and you will not even see that it's glued in there. So that's also a very nice one. And you can also print on book paper or music paper, and then when you have a couple of layers, you will still see a little bit of the letters or of the music notes, and that will add a very nice texture to your prints. You could even print on magazine paper if you like. The only paper that you cannot print on is photo paper, because photo paper has a coating, and if that comes in touch with your gel plate, it will stick to the gel plate and you will not be able to get it off. So that's not a good idea. No photo paper. So that's the paper, and now the paint. So there are many products that you can use to print with, but today for the basics, we're going to start with acrylic paint. And the best acrylic paint to print with is soft body or fluid acrylic paint. A heavy body paint is not the best because it's so thick and hard to spread, and also not as easy to pull as the soft body or the fluid. So I have a couple of paints here. I have, for instance, Liquitex Basics, which is a soft body paint. I have Golden Fluid Acrylics, which is a very thin fluid paint. I have Winsor & Newton, which is also a soft body acrylic. And I have some Deco Art. This one has metallics. Metallics are also fun to print with. And I have some, let me see, what else did I have? I have one Americana multi-surface satin acrylic paint. So you can basically print with any acrylic paint, from very cheap to very, very expensive. They will all work. The difference is that when you take a paint, when you use a paint that is a little bit more expensive, so not the cheapest one, that you will have more pigments in it. And the more pigments you have, the brighter and deeper your colors will be. And because you spread the paint so much on the plate and you work with very thin layers, it's nice to have a lot of pigments in your paint. So you really don't need to have the most expensive one, like a student grade professional paint like Liquitex is very, very nice paint to gel print with. And of course you can use even cheaper acrylic paints. I can imagine that when you're just starting, that you're like, oh, do I really need those expensive paints? No, you don't. But you want your prints to turn out nice, because otherwise you will not continue printing, right? So I always say, just take the best one you can afford. So I think if you can afford something like in the middle, like Liquitex, then that's a really good choice. So that's about the paints. Now let me show you how to start printing. So when you start printing on a new plate, sometimes the paint will bead up. That's because there is this thin layer of mineral oil on top. If that happens to your paint, then you can just wash your gel plate with some dishwashing soap, and some water, and then just dry it with a paper towel, and then you're good to go. So that might happen actually when I start printing, but we'll see. It also gives a very nice watercolory effect, which I really like, and you will not be able to achieve later anymore if you would like. So maybe just embrace those first not so perfect prints. So usually I put some paper on the side, just some copier paper to roll off my brayer. That's to clean my brayer and get the wet paint off if when I add a new color of paint, that it doesn't mix with the paint that's still on my brayer. So I have the copier paper here, and now I'm ready to start. So there's another thing I wanted to say about the paint is that you have a different opacity for paints. So some paints are very translucent, some paints are very opaque, and there are a couple that are somewhere in the middle. If you have the more professional paints, you can see on the packaging if your paint is translucent or opaque. So there's a little square here, and if the square is black, then you have an opaque paint. If the square is like this one here, white, then you have a very translucent paint. And if you have one that has, let me see, half white and half black, then it's somewhere in the middle. So depending on the kind of prints you want to make, you can keep in mind if the paint is opaque or not. I usually just take whatever color I like, and I just go with the flow, and I will just, whatever happens, happens. But if you want to make sure that you cover your first layer with your second layer, then you should look at the paint and see if it's opaque or not. Now, I usually start with the brightest color and the colors that are the most likely to be translucent, because yellow is a lot of times a very translucent color. So if I would use this in my second or third layer, it would never be as bright as in the first layer where I printed on the white paper. If I would print it on top of another color, then and it is translucent, the color will change and it will never be as bright as it is in the first layer. So I usually start the first layer with the brightest colors. And I'm going to print on my heavier copier paper right now. So you can see I only use a tiny little bit of paint. You only need a little bit of paint. If you use too much paint, then you will only pull the top layer of the paint and you will not get a nice smooth print. So you roll out the paint. And now I could already add some texture in the first layer, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to show you how a layer, solid layer looks. So this is my first layer, and here you can see that the paint actually did a little bit of that beading, what I talked about. So I can just continue printing, and at some point when the plate is not so new anymore, it will disappear. If you don't like this when this happens, then you have to clean your plate. But I actually really like the texture that it creates. As you can see, my plate is clean. It's completely clean. That means that I used exactly the right amount of paint. If there would still be a lot of paint left behind on my plate, then I would have used too much paint. You have to try out for yourself what the right amount of paint is, because it depends on the brand and the type of paint that you're using. and of course on how big your plate is, but it could even be different when you're in a hotter area, or the circumstances in your house could change the amount of paint that you actually need. So that's the first layer. Now I can add a second layer on top. So I'm using a different color, tiny little bit of paint. I'm going to roll it out, but I'm not going to cover the entire plate because I only want this color on one side on my plate. And now I want to add some texture, and along the way I'm going to show you all kinds of textures that you can find around the house and that almost everybody has, like for instance bubble wrap. So I'm just going to push that bubble wrap on top, like a stamp with it. And when I remove the bubble wrap, I'm also removing some paint from the plate, which is creating the texture. So now I'm just going to put the paper back on top. And there we have our second layer. And you can see the texture of the bubble wrap. Now, I did not mark my paper, and I've put it on the plate the wrong side around. I should have put it like this, so you can see that it's not lined up. What I can do before I print is mark my paper. So I know what the bottom of my paper is. Then when I put it back on the next time, I know exactly how to put it on. But when you use your paper as collage material, then it doesn't really matter if it's lined up or not. But if you're creating something that you want to frame, or a card or whatever, you really want it to line up, right? So this way we can continue building up layers. And maybe you noticed when I roll out my paint, I don't roll like this, because if I do that, you can see that I just get this like oval shape here instead of spreading the paint all around. So you have to make sure that the paint goes all around your brayer to spread it evenly on the plate. And in order to do that, you just roll, pick it up and roll like this. So that way you will get a nice and even cover all over the plate. Now let's get some other texture. Create some other texture. Like for instance, Jelly Arts has these fun mini printing tools, which can create all kinds of texture just by going in there. Like this, for instance. Like that. And now I'm going to put my paper on top again, but I'm not going to put it all the way down because I only want half of it printed. And again, I have it the wrong way around, as you can see, but that's okay. So this one I actually marked, so I should be able to line that up. There we go. So I'm brayering off my paint from my brayer all the time. And sometimes my cleaning paper even turns out even nicer than my actual prints. So now you can see that there's a little bit of paint left on my plate. I'm not going to clean this because I really like it if you have little bits of leftover paint on your on your plate and you do the next print, and these little leftovers show up in your next print, which gives a really nice and distressed look. So I'm just going to print on top of this. I'm just going to add a new color. And instead of using just one color, I can also use 2 colors. So this is a very nice one that's called Bright Aqua Green. Very nice color. And I need a little bit more here. So, and now I'm going to roll out the other color and have them blend somewhere in the middle. And I'm just going to print on top of this. The fun thing about gel printing, what I really like about gel printing is that is the unexpected, that you never know what is going to happen, and you just build up layers and layers and just see what happens, and every print is some kind of a surprise. Now here you can see the texture you see here is what was left behind from my previous print. And I really like it when that happens, when little bits of color pop up there, different colors than you actually put on your plate. Again, here is still a little bit of the blue, and I'm just going to leave it there. If you want to make really nice, clean prints, then you can, of course, clean your plate in between prints, and you can use a baby wipe. But if you don't want to use a baby wipe, you can also just use some water and a soft cloth and just clean it with that. So are there any questions, Luann, right now that I can answer?
Oh, Birgit, somebody asked, what does it mean when their brayer is lifting the paint off the plate?
Oh, well, then you bray it too long, then you kind of over brayer, and what happens is that the paint starts to dry, and the wet paint on the brayer is kind of pulling the drying paint from the plate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Marsha also responded that maybe you should just roll in the one direction and lift the roller and then go back, just as you demonstrated a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but still, when you keep brayering, at some point your paint starts to dry, and then you start pulling it from the plate. So you should not over brayer. You should not brayer too long.
Okay, and then the other question, just for clarification, what thickness of paper are you using?
So right now I'm using the heaviest copier paper that I can get here in the Netherlands, which is about 200 grams. And if I'm right, then that's about 90 lbs.
Okay, so we would call that cardstock. So it's...
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have cardstock too, and it's probably the same weight, but this is just what our letter size is, and you buy it like in a big pack, and you can use it for your printer. But yeah, you could also use like a smooth white cardstock instead. So let's add some other texture, like for instance, with a sponge, which can create very organic texture. You can just use it as a stamp and that way remove paint from the plate. So what sometimes happens when you're waiting just a little bit too long, or when you're talking like I'm doing right now and not continuing with the printing is that the paint dries on your plate. And when the paint dries on your plate, you will not be able to pull a good print. So I'm going to show you. I think my paint actually already dried quite a bit, and maybe I can pull still a little bit of the paint, but probably not all of it. Oh, actually I can pull all of it. That's funny. That didn't dry as fast as I thought. So here you can see the texture that the sponge created, which is fun. If I would have known that I would still be able to pull this print, then I probably would have done it on a sheet of paper that already had some color on it, because then you get the nice layering. And now the white that you see in this print is the white of the paper, which I don't like that much. If I want to have white in my prints, then I would usually use white paint instead of using the white of the paper. But what I was hoping was that this paint would already be dry, and then I could have used another layer of paint to actually pull the dried paint from the plate, but I will do that later. So let me show you that you can actually print on very, very thin paper also. So when you want to print on tissue paper or silk paper like this, then it's even more important that you don't use too much paint, because then the paint will just soak through the paper and you will not get a nice print. So I'm going to use a very thin layer. Let me see. Let's use some metallic, dazzling metallics, festive red. It's a nice color. It has a really nice shine. So I'm adding a very thin layer. If at any point I feel like there's too much paint on my plate, I will not continue and print it as it is, but I will roll off some of the paint on my cleanup paper to make sure that I get this really thin layer. Because in the end, my print will not be pretty if there's too much paint on there. So it's better to just roll it off. So I'm going to add a second color, which is a cadmium yellow, and some new texture. Let's bring in some new texture. So there's all kinds of textures to find around the house, like you can use cardboard packaging material. And what you can do is, if you have cardboard like this from a cardboard box, you can just peel off the top layer, and that's easier if you spray it with water first and let it soak in for a minute. But then you end up with this. I don't let the water soak in too long, because then you get a very clean texture, and I really like the bits of paper that stay behind and create a really nice distressed look. So I can now use this to print with, and what I can do is the color that I pick up here, I can move it to this side. So a little bit of the red, if it's still wet enough, what I pick up here, I can kind of put it down there. And now I don't have a background ready to print on with some color. So I'm just going to use this one and just see what happens. Because gel printing is all about the surprise, and sometimes you think like this is not going to be any good, and then it turns out to be one of the best prints ever. So here we go. This is a cardboard texture, which is really nice, but along the way I lost my spongy background, but that's okay. And I was actually going to print on tissue paper also. So let's do another one. Let's do another one. Let's take the bright aqua again. And how about we add some medium magenta. Now, instead of rolling out the paints nicely next to each other and make them blend, I can also go all around, all over the plate and create a very busy, colorful background. When I do backgrounds like this, I usually don't use more than 2 colors at the same time, because you very easily can create mud if you use too many colors at the same time. So this one that I also just showed you, when you peel off the top layer, you get a really nice texture. This is some kind of packaging material. So from now on, you will look at all of your boxes and packaging that's getting into your house to see if there's anything that you can use for gel printing. This creates a really fun texture. Now I'm going to put my tissue paper on top very lightly. And now make sure that you pull it up right away. Don't leave it to dry on the plate, because then it's going to be harder to remove. And look at this. Look at how nice this paper looks. And as you can see, you can still see my hand through the paper. That's how translucent it is. So imagine that you glue this into your art journal, and you have, for instance, a yellow background, and you glue this in everywhere where there's no color in your print. The color of your background will show. So that's pretty cool, I think. Now here I again have some leftover paint, a little bit of leftover paint, and I'm still leaving this all on. Just continue printing. Let's do some printing on book paper, so you can see how it looks with the text in the print. And I'm going to start with what am I going to start with? Let's start with the yellow again, and then do a really dark color on top. But for the first layer, I'm using a yellow, and probably with this layer, this thin layer of paint will pull up all the leftover paint from my previous prints. And I might actually end up with a clean plate again. An almost clean plate. But here you go. As you can see, all the little bits of all the leftover paints, previous prints. Now I want to add a darker color on top of this. Let's find a really opaque one. So I'm going to use this one. This is an opaque deep turquoise. And I'm just going to spread that on the plate. I'm actually going to add a little bit of this color because I like it. It's not really opaque, but when I mix it with the opaque one, it will be good enough. So I'm just randomly spreading those colors. Don't overbrayer this, because then you will just end up with one new color instead of all the gradients of these two colors. Now, a fun thing to do is get some thread, yarn, string, whatever you call it, and put that on the plate, because the plate is very sensitive for texture that you put on there. Even a hair, even if there's a hair left on your plate and you pull a print, you will you will actually see the hair in your print. So you can imagine that a string or a sewing thread like this will actually show in the print. So I'm going to put my book paper back on top. And meanwhile, maybe there are some more questions. Luann, is there anything you want me to answer?
Yes, here's a fun one. Somebody asked, what do you do to rescue prints that haven't quite worked?
Ah, okay. So there are a couple of things that you can do. So now I'm just going to take off the string, and so you can see the texture that it creates. That's fun, isn't it? Right? So if you have a print that you don't really like, you can just print more layers on top, basically. So and what the fun thing to do then is to use masks and cover up only parts of your print, because sometimes when you see only little bits of the print that you didn't like, suddenly looks much better than you have the print in whole. So I will just pull a print from this, and then I will show you with this one what I mean with the masking. So first, here is the leftover paint that was underneath the string, so that didn't pull with the previous print. And honestly, I think these are the best prints. The second one, the ghost print, the print where you pick up any leftover paint that was underneath your stencil or your mask or your string or whatever you put on the plate. Leave it to dry. It probably is dry right now. Almost dry, not completely. So if you want to do this, you have to be a little bit patient, because if you don't leave the paint to dry and you add the next layer to pull the print, you will just mix it with the color that's already on the plate, and you will lose the pattern that was left behind. My favorite color to pull prints like this is white, plus 1 or 2 extra colors in a very tiny amount of other colors. So I look at the colors that are on my plate, which is a little bit of bluish, greenish. And I like the combination with pink. So I'm adding a rose pink, a tiny little bit. And it might not look a lot that's left on the plate. You might actually see on the camera only the thicker string, but there's also a lot of very thin string pattern left behind, which will actually show probably pretty well when we pull the print. So I start with the white, roll it out all over the plate, and then here at the end add a little bit of pink. Not going to have it everywhere, but just on one side. So if you want to pull dry paint from the plate, the layer that you use to pull the dried print has to be very, very, very thin. Because if you have a thick layer of paint, you will only pull the top layer, and you will not pull up the dried paint that's underneath on the plate. So it takes a little bit of practice to find out how much paint you need, because it has to be a very thin layer. But on the other hand, it cannot dry before you pull the print. Oh, look at this. So this is why I love gel printing, because you can do this kind of awesome stuff. That's cool, isn't it? I love it. So as you can see, I used exactly the right amount of paint again to pull that dried paint from the plate, because my plate is completely clean. I pulled up all the leftovers, which is a very good indication. So when you realize when you're printing that that is happening, then you know that you use the right amount of paint. If you try to pull a print like this and still half of it is staying behind, then usually that means that you use too much paint, because all the paint was not able to pull up the dried paint. So if there's any paint left behind, you use too much paint. So now to the not so cool prints, how to rescue a not so cool print. Let's pretend that this is a not so cool print. And what I did, I hand cut some masks from copier paper, and I used the heavier copier paper because then I can probably use the mask a couple of times. And even if you use the normal copier paper, if it builds up layers of paint, then you will probably also be able to use them a couple of times, and they will at some point become very pretty with all the layers of paint. But so this print, let's add an extra layer on top. What color are we going to do? I'm going to take another, I want an opaque one. So this is a little bit translucent, but I'm going to mix it with an opaque one. I'm going to use this one again, deep turquoise, because I love it. Let's also add a little bit of the Prussian blue. And this might be a little bit too much of the magenta here, so I'm going to roll off a little bit. And I'm going to blend these colors. Not doing the crazy stuff I did before, but like this. Now I'm going to add some masks on top of my paint. So this is going to cover up most of this print, except in the areas where my masks are. And probably I'm going to do this one the wrong side up again, but let's see.
Hey, Birgit, while you're doing that, can you answer this one? Are there any media that you don't like using or that don't work very well with the jelly plate?
Well, I've used, oh, look at this. Better, huh? Don't you like that? So I've used probably everything I could find in my studio on my gel plate, and there are a couple of things that don't work or don't work well, and most of the things that don't work well are the water soluble. That's not completely true, because water soluble also works. Is there anything I don't like to use on my gel plate? I don't know. It depends on what you want to achieve. So water soluble products can also be used on the plate, but they are not spreading very well. So it's hard to use them with stencils or masks, but you can get very nice watercolory effects when you put water soluble products on the plate. I've used stamping inks, both permanent and water soluble. I've used watercolor. I've used all kinds of media. And the only thing that I ever tried that absolutely did not work for me was brucios, so pigment powders. And other than that, you can make everything work for you. And what I wanted to say tonight is don't be too precious with your gel plate. Because as I said, I've tried all of those on my plate and I never ruined one of my plates. The only thing that happened to me is that I used products and that was mostly alcohol-based products that stain the plate. So I have one gel plate that is almost as yellow as this. Because I used a yellow alcohol ink on my plate. But that doesn't affect how the plate works. So even if that happens, don't worry about it. You can use the plate as you did before. And your prints will not be any different. And for me, my gel plate is just a tool. And I don't really care. I mean, this how do you call it, clear as this one is right now, none of your plates will stay like this. It's just impossible. If you use it, it will kind of, the color will change. It will get a little bit yellowish, but that's fine. So if you have anything on your plate that you can't get off by pulling a print and you want to clean your plate at some point, maybe you want to clean off leftover paint because you're going to start a new project or whatever, you can always clean your plate with oil.
Hey, Brigitte, your camera just turned off.
What happened?
Your camera turned off.
But, okay, let me see what happened here. How is that possible?
There
am I back?
Yes.
There was something with my power, I think. Okay, I'm back. I'm not gone. I hope everybody's still here. Sorry about that. Now I don't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, if there's any paint left on your plate and you want to clean your plate, you can use baby oil, just like this, baby oil, or even any, if you don't want to use baby oil, any vegetable oil. And you will be amazed by all the dirt that comes off your plate, and it will be as clean as possible, but it will never again be as clear as it was the first time you used it. So here you can see that I actually pulled up the little edges of the mask I used for this print. And I have some other objects here that you can use to create texture, and I don't think I have enough time to show everything, so I'm just going to show you, give you some ideas. Look around in your house and you will probably find tons and tons of stuff that you can use to create texture. Like I have some punchinella here, or sequin waste, a little tube. I think there were crayons in here or something. This is like an onion bag that you can use. Egg carton gives a really fun effect. I think I have time to show that one real quick. So another fun thing to do is when you add only color to one half of your plate, then you can move the color using, for instance, an egg carton like this to the other side of the plate. So I'm going to push this down, use it as a stamp and lift it up and then put it back down there. There you can see it's moving the color from here to that side. And now I could, if I want to, just print on top of this one and see what happens. So in general, I would say the more layers you print on top of each other, the better your prints get. Yeah. Here you go. This is like 3 different textures on top of each other. So you have the leftover paint from the masking, then you have the layer with the cardboard, and then on top you have the layer with the egg carton. And I think this is pretty cool. Maybe a little bit of pink up here using some of the string might add some fun interest.
So Birgit, can I interject a minute? We're getting to the end, and somebody asked if you could possibly show some finished items that you've made with your prints. So I was thinking, do you have any of your little journals right there?
I'm sorry, I don't have that here. I'm not in my studio, and I'm in a different room, and I didn't think about that. I could have brought one of my journals to actually show something. I mean, I can get one, but I would have to get up for a minute to go to another.
We'll do that in the next class.
Yeah, maybe it's better to do that in the next class then. For now, are there any other questions about this particular class? So here we have yet another layer. And so I can go on and add layers as I like, especially if you use opaque paint, and then leave little areas open where you can then see the previous print shining through. Can be very interesting. Let me see, there was something else.
I don't think we have any other questions here. Well, somebody just asked about Punchinella. Where do you get that?
I got it. I think I got it online, or I don't know, one time in some mixed media kit, or I've had it for like forever. There was a time that it was very popular and you could get it everywhere, but I'm not really sure actually.
I think I've seen some on Etsy. I think I've seen that, and so you can get packs, small packs of it.
Yeah, and you can even have like different sizes, and you can have stars and hearts and all kinds of different shapes. It doesn't have to be circles like this one.
Right.
So, yeah, and I guess then, I mean, I could go on for at least 2 more hours and show you all kinds of textures and layers, and but I hope this is getting you started. Hey, that's me again. Yeah, I want to thank you now for being here. I want to point out that there will be 2 more Jelly Arts classes coming up. One is with Marcia Falk on December 2nd, and then there's another class December 9 with Tanya Ahmed. So I hope you will join them too for some fun classes. And if there are no more questions right now, then thank you for being here with me, and hopefully I will see you again another time.